Hello wonderful person, this is Anton, and the Earth here looks extremely cluttered with all kinds of really funny looking points. Today, as you can probably tell from the video title, we're going to be talking about the satellites orbiting our planet, and we're going to briefly discuss the total number and the types of satellites out there. I'm going to also show you a website that can help you explore this a little bit more, and well, overall you're going to learn more about the space exploration and how it really picked up in the last few years. Welcome to What the Math. So this photo right here was actually published by a European Space Agency a few years ago, and honestly I'm getting a bit of a mixed feeling about it. On the one hand, I'm really proud that we were able to achieve so much in terms of space exploration. On the other hand though, it really looks like something I want to just scratch off. It almost looks like our planet is like sick or something. But on the other hand, let's actually not talk about the negatives of having so much satellites in space just yet. I'm going to do this in the video tomorrow. Come back tomorrow to learn about the so-called Kessler syndrome. It does sound like a sickness, doesn't it? Today we're talking about the number of satellites, and specifically I actually wanted to show you the website known as Stuff in Space. The link for this is in the description below, where you can actually look at and pretty much see most major space launches that involved some kind of a satellite or a debris. And we actually are going to take a look at some of the things that we were able to launch in the last few years. But specifically, I just wanted to talk about, well, this. Look at this from the outside. You see this ring here? Can you guess what it is? Well, you can probably see that it almost looks like an artificial ring. And this is actually something that I've discussed in one of the previous videos you can see on top. This particular ring can technically be used to find intelligent extraterrestrial life outside of our solar system. It does have a name. It's called Clark ring, or essentially the ring of satellites formed by some kind of intelligent species that almost looks like a ring around the planet, but it's actually artificial. And today we're going to briefly talk about what kind of stuff is here and how much of it is here. But first, try to guess, how many satellites do you think there are out there? And how many did we actually launch this year and last year, which actually was the record year for satellite launch. 2017 was actually the highest number of satellites we've ever launched. And so to answer the question of total number, there is almost 5,000 objects here. Very, very close to 5,000 after the recent SpaceX launch that introduced 64 more satellites. And we don't really have them on the list just yet because when I'm making this video, the launch just finished. However, I'm sure when you're looking at the website, they're already going to be there, and you can actually find them, I believe, under SpaceX right here. You can actually maybe find them this way. You can also obviously use this particular website to see what's orbiting right above you. So right now I'm in South Korea, so I can actually go here and maybe see if anything is flying over me right now. And right now there seems to be nothing, but you can actually see how every satellite here is actually moving around as it orbits the planet. So with all of the satellites we launched this year, we actually increased the total number of satellites by about 5%. And like I said, there's close to 5,000 satellites out there now. And I believe this year we launched close to about 300 satellites, but in 2017, there were a total of 453 launches. That's actually a lot when you think about it. It's literally like more than, I guess, almost 2 satellites per day. And in some sense, you have to remember that many satellites were launched as a bundle. So like, for example, SpaceX just launched a total of 64 satellites in this particular launch you see on the screen right now. And basically all of them were so-called CubeSats. They were tiny satellites, only about 10 by 10 by 10 centimeters in size, which really makes it a relatively efficient way of launching different communication, but also different research satellites. And so after this particular launch, the number of total objects increased to close to about 5,000. Although it may not sound like a lot yet, you have to also realize that over the last 50 or 60 years, we've only actually been able to launch about 8,200 satellites in total. So that's how efficient and how extremely productive we've become over the past few years. And I think a lot of those advances were, well, because of the startups like SpaceX and a few other companies that were able to allow us to launch satellites very cheaply, very efficiently, and very quickly. SpaceX alone had 18 rocket launches this year and was able to put quite a lot of satellites into orbit. Not to mention a relatively expensive vehicle that made headlines earlier this year when Elon Musk's company was able to launch this beautiful vehicle into orbit relatively close to Mars and to the asteroid belt, but quite far away from Earth. And what's interesting, about 22% of all of the satellites launched that you see here were actually launched in the last 8 years. So the efficiency of satellite launching has become dramatically higher than before. If we keep increasing the number of satellites by about 5% every single year, we're going to have hundreds of thousands of satellites in the next decade or so. That's actually quite impressive. Although ironically, only about 2,000 of all of these objects are still working. Close to about 3,000 of them are basically dead weight. They're no longer functioning or are debris. There's actually quite a lot of debris here that you can see that this is actually a leftover from something. So is this. And many of these objects that you see here are, in a sense, orbital junk, which is a huge problem that is going to become an even bigger problem in the next few years. And I'm going to talk about this in a little bit more detail.
Space station gives us the ability to explore our home planet in a way we never could. But that God's eye view is getting dangerous.
We have a somewhat risky environment that we've created because we are surrounded, our planet is surrounded by this cloud of space debris.
3, 2, 1, 0.
For almost 60 years, we've launched rockets and spacecraft into Earth's orbit. But now, thousands of objects, from tiny screws and bolts to dead satellites, encircle the Earth, transforming the space above us into a junkyard.
It seems kind of comical, the idea that someday the Earth might actually be surrounded by some ring of space garbage, kind of like a less nice version of Saturn, but it's a real possibility.
Now, the International Space Station is in the crosshairs.
The International Space Station has already been hit by little bits of debris on a number of occasions, and there are no guarantees that other substantial things might not hit it again in the future.
Wonder.
This is our home.
Howdy, neighbors. Hey, buddy.
This is gonna be a gas.
It's the job of the military to monitor the thousands of pieces of debris orbiting the Earth. The men and women at Vandenberg Air Force Base in California are keeping their eyes on the skies 24 hours a day.
So currently we monitor and track approximately 23,000 objects in space. Among those is about 1,300 active payloads or satellites, and the rest being space debris from prior launches or prior collisions. Everyone should care about what's going on with space objects and space debris because we're so reliant nowadays upon technology that if something were to happen to a satellite, it's going to severely degrade our ability to do certain things, whether it be ATM withdrawals, GPS, or anything.
It's critical that we track space debris because it poses a risk to all the active payloads, including the International Space Station. Some of this debris we track up to 10 centimeters.
Even a piece of debris the size of a small screw could destroy the space station.
If you can think of a 2-centimeter ball bearing up in space, it's traveling at 17,000 miles per hour. That force is equivalent to a Jeep Wrangler traveling at 70 miles per hour. So as the object size increases, the impact and the force behind that collision could be astronomically larger.